Okay, so we're going to be looking at the 32nd mitzvah of the Torah, which is the mitzvah to honor Cohanim. An interesting mitzvah. Cohanim obviously didn't earn this honor, right? This is not it's not earned honor from the Cohanim. This is it's something that God said we have to honor the Cohanim, so we honor the Cohanim. Okay, so let's look at some of the sources and get to our questions and get to a svara here. This year is actually going to be it's sort of like, it's two parts, but each part exists on its own. The second part really does exist somewhat on the first part, but the first part's its own contained unit. There's enough in the first thing that we're going to look at to be able to understand the mitzvah, but then there are two other halachos in the second part that are essential, I think, to really getting the full glance and full perspective of the mitzvah. That's the idea where Chazal came in. We're going to mention in a little of Darchei Shalom, where Chazal wanted to keep the peace when it came to Kriyas Torah. So they said that Cohanim have to get the first aliyah. And then comes the question of how can we have a mitzvah of honoring the Cohanim that supersedes the mitzvah of honoring talmidei chachamim. Meaning, if you have two people to give a kavod to, so how could you give the kavod to the Cohen above the talmid chacham? It would seem to be the talmid chacham should get the honor. And so those are two questions that we're going to be two areas that we're going to look at in the second part. In the first part, we're just going to try to understand the mitzvah itself and see how we can understand it. So the first source to say as follows: Kidoshim yu oayam v'lo yichalu shem oayam ki yes yishe Hashem lachem lachem oayam hey makrivim v'hayu kodesh isha zona v'chalal lo yikachu v'isha grusha misha lo yikachu ki kadosh hu lo yikachu. So there's certain halachos that apply to a Cohen. And right, so and basically it seems to be because what the Cohen does is as Pasach says, "V'hidashto ki eslechem elkachahu makriv kodesh yelcha ki kadosh ani Hashem mikadeshchem." Right, so you have to sanctify the Cohanim. Okay, so that seems to be the mitzvah. V'hidashto is to sanctify the Cohanim. Okay, Rashi says, right? So we give him, we treat him in a sacred way, right? That's what he's saying. Treat him in a sacred way. Treat him with kedusha. Okay, so he opens up first, right? With not every single thing. When it's a bracha, a suda, whatever it is, the Cohen gets first. Okay, and the Rambam says that the reasoning behind this mitzvah is because after he's makriv lechem al kacha, once he gives the karbanos, he gives the bread, right? So then he's kadosh yelachas, and then he's sanctified to you. He has a sanctified place. Okay, so that's the basic sources of the halacha. Okay, the Rambam in the Sefer Mitzvos says that we have a mitzvah to be mechabed Aaron. Okay, and then there's two things here that we saw in the introductory shiur, right, that I found curious. The first thing is this idea that the Cohanim, the honor of the Cohanim is whether or not they want it or not. Okay, let me explain why this makes a difference. Give me a second, sorry here. Why this matters. Okay, and what's so curious about this mitzvah? So when there's a mitzvah to honor somebody, so that seems strange on its own, because the Torah is a way of sort of like it's hard to encapsulate what the issue is here, but we shouldn't honor people. It doesn't make so much sense to honor people, right? Because why are we showing honor to some people and to others, or we're not? Well, what generates this, right? What generates this idea of honoring? And it's not so much, I know it's going to sound like a why question. It's not so much the why. I'm not asking why, but it seems like a strange thing to honor somebody, right? I can understand why certain people deserve honor, right? But the whole concept of putting people on a pedestal seems not to fit in consistently with the rest of the Torah, right? Our Torah is about us and the Kadosh Baruch Hu, so we treat people right. But now we're having certain people that that are placed on above everybody else, and they have a certain kavod. And then the question becomes, okay, fine. So let's say that we do give kavod to people, right? Okay, that's the way of the Torah. It's you didn't make any. You thought that you shouldn't, but really you should. And we do give kavod to people in Torah. Okay, fine. So what does that kavod look like? How does one express kavod to somebody, right? How does somebody do that, right? So when it comes to kibbud avim, so what do we say? We say kibbud avim is you go and get them water, right? Like you fulfill their wishes, right? That's kibbud avim. Okay, kavod chachamim, you stand up for them, right? Okay, there's a sort of like an objective, but also getting them water would be the same thing. It's the kavod of kibbud avim and tam chacham. We saw they're connected, right? Okay, so how does a Cohen, how are you supposed to give kavod to a Cohen? Is it the kavod of granting their wishes, or is it the kavod of standing up for them? And what do we find? That it's really neither. It's like this strange thing where we come up with this, you have to be giving them, first. First is how we show the Cohen kavod. So how is that kavod? That's all right. How is that? I was like that. That's it. It's a strange sugya. Like the whole thing seems just a little off because it just seems like it comes out of nowhere, basically, right? We're not like right. Where's that? That's my issue. Is well, what is this? What are we doing here when we give a Cohen kavod, right? What's the idea? That's really my question. That's why I don't understand. And maybe I'm not being clear on what's bothering me. I don't know. It doesn't sound like I'm being clear. But right. But what exactly? What are we honoring even? What is it that we're honoring? Are we honoring we're honoring the person? When it comes to parents, I understand I'm honoring, let's say, the relationship or what the parents do for me. When it comes to Rebbe, something similar, but at least the Rebbe has some status that he's earned, right? Talmid Chacham has status that he's earned. But what is the Cohen here, right? What exactly am I honoring, and how am I honoring, and how does the honor fit in? So now the Rambam says that here's the thing: the Cohen can't be mochel on his kavod. The Cohen can't be mochel. He can't give up on his kavod. It seems, right? This is not about the Cohen. The Cohen says, "Nah, it's okay. Like I don't really need the kavod." So no, it's not about you, right? This isn't about you, right? So okay. So why is that so important? Why does the Rambam open up the Sefer HaMitzvos? Right, when he talks about this mitzvah, he opens it. The first thing he tells you, "Afilu yimanu also lo nishmahem," right? So you don't listen to them, even if they say, "No, I don't want it." So that's when the Rambam opens up with something and he starts off with something. He's telling you the nature of it. That's like one of the most important things we have to know about this halacha. Is that the one of the most important things is that the Cohen can't turn it down. This is not something that the Cohen could say, It's okay. I don't need it." Right? No, it's not about the Cohen. Okay, so that's a strange thing. Okay.
So that can't we say that the Rambam has your assumption that why should the Cohen get kavod, and the Rambam is saying you might think that this inyan of kavod by a Cohen is very strange. Torah is coming to tell you that yes, the Cohen does get kavod above and beyond other people. Not like what you might think that there's no such inyan of kavod by a Cohen.
No, because the Rambam just says there's a mitzvah. Now I know that that's true, right? I'm not going to deny a mitzvah existing, right? So I know that that's I don't need the Rambam to tell me that it's not about. That doesn't add to it, I don't think. Right, I think it's right. But
when the last part that he says afilu yimanu also lo nishma lahem, the Rambam is telling you that the Torah puts the Cohen in a separate category. It's not just I want to be a nice guy and thank the Cohen.
Okay, so what's that? Okay, fine. So what's that category? Why is this so? So the Rambam's putting it. So okay, good, fine. So that's okay. I like the point. Okay, so let's say that we're going to put this in. The Cohen is not like Rebbe, is not like parents, right? The Cohen is something different. Okay, fine. Okay, great. Okay, so now that adds the question of what is it, right? What's the Cohen here? Okay, then the Rambam says that you have to honor a blemish Cohen, right? that right. So we don't honor him, right? Sorry, we do honor him even if he's not roi for giving a korban. Okay, so right, so but the Ramban had tied it into the fact that he gives a korban, right? That's the Ramban had said that that's an essential part of it, is the fact that the reason why we honor the Cohen, right, is because he gives a korban. So is the Rambam arguing with the Ramban here? Are they how do we understand that that what seems to be a debate between them? Okay. Then we had a problem with the lashonos that the Rambam's using, the languages, right? Because in the Sefer Mitzvah, so let me go back, which the Sefer Mitzvah, it's difficult to say, it's not really his language. The Rambam didn't use this word. This is a translation, right? But it seems to be Rav Kafach translates this as lachabed, like to honor, right? So that seems to be like the one place that he has this, is to honor. And then here he says lakadesh, right? So he says it's to sanctify. And then here the Rambam says, right, it's lahavdiel Cohanim, right? If you look down here on the line, I don't think I'm going to be able to reach it, but he says lahavdiel, right? That you separate the Cohen, right? So you have mechabed, lakadesh, and lahavdiel, right? So lachabed is to honor, lakadesh is to sanctify, and lahavdiel is to separate, right? So why? It's not so much what do the three signify, but why use three, right? Well, just use one of them, right? Is this the same idea? Why is the Rambam, he's switching his own language, right? He's switching the words, not just the translation, but he's switching it also. Okay. Okay. And then we want to know, right? This thing, Tzarech Kol Adam here in source number 7, Yisrael Linhog Behem Kavod Harbe, Haktim Osam Kol Davar Shem Kedusha. So you have to give them like a tremendous amount of kavod, and right. So we give them first. So how is giving them first a sign of honor? Now, on a simple basis that we understand how giving them first, right? Give somebody first. It just seems like a way of honoring somebody, right? But how is this a form of honoring? How is giving first? And if it is a form of honoring, so why don't we do this with our parents, and why don't we do this with our rebbeim? There's no idea. I've never seen it, at least. I don't know. Maybe somebody would say it, but I think if they would say it, they'd just be extrapolating from this halacha. But I've never seen a Rishon say it, that if your parents are at the table, you should serve them first, because that's a way of being mechabed somebody. I don't know. I could be mistaken. It could be that is something that you see. I've never seen that anywhere. So if giving somebody first is really a way of showing kavod, so why don't we do that in other places? Right?
Are all the examples that were being given here of where the Cohen gets first things that deal with, let's say, Birchas Hamazon mitzvos, Aliyah LaTorah?
Not necessarily. Look, this is the thing. So that's the Magen Avram here, right? The Magen Avram says anything that you have a group of people together, right? You have a city council meeting, and one of the city council members is a Cohen. He goes first. That's this Magen Avram, right? And
Cohen walks into the post office, he gets first online.
It would seem to me.
Okay.
And it would seem to be that the Cohen could say, "Excuse me, I'm a Cohen. Please get out of my way. I'm going first here." It'd be great for great adventures, like Disney World. It'd be a whole new way. You have the VIP pass and you have the Cohen pass. That would be incredible. I don't know if it would work.
He's in the bakery in Meashar, and maybe he gets first.
No, because then you'd have this Magen Avram you could point to, right? Everybody else would carry around this Magen Avram. So why aren't people careful about this? So say, because we don't believe in your yichus. We say we don't really know if you're a real Cohen. So be like, prove you're a real Cohen, and you go in front of me in line. Let's see the shtar yichusin. If you don't have that, and no one does, so sorry, you can't cut in line. I don't have to give up my spot in line because you think you're a Cohen. Okay, so that's that's the Magen Avram. I thought that Magen Avram was an interesting Magen Avram. Okay, then you have the Sefer Chinuch. The Sefer Chinuch says, right, says that a Cohen that's a sinner, okay, so you don't give him this this kavod, right? He doesn't get this kavod. So I don't understand. The logic doesn't seem to make sense here. If we say that a Cohen, we give a Cohen kavod, not because of who the Cohen is, but because he's a Cohen. So now we're injecting sort of his personal observance into the mitzvah, right? But we just said that it doesn't make a difference who the Cohen is, right? When the Cohen says, "Listen, I don't deserve this kavod," so we sit there and say to him, "It's not about you. It's about the fact that you're a Cohen. We don't care what you think. It's about the fact that you're a Cohen, right?" So now we're saying, unless the Cohen's a sinner, if he's sinner, then it is all about the Cohen. Then it's about the person. So that seems to be somewhat contradictory, right? Yeah, everybody sees that? Yeah, I hope so, right? That's okay. And then you have the Ran. The Ran has this whole question about, it seems to, now everybody disagrees with the Ran on this. Everybody reads the pasuk and they don't see that it talks about a Kohen Gadol. But the Ran is convinced that these psukim that we read all the way in the beginning refer to a Kohen Gadol only. And since it only refers to a Kohen Gadol, the Ran is curious as to why we extend this to a Kohen Hedjot. So my question is, according to the Ran, okay, we do extend it to a Kohen Hedjot. That's obvious, right? To a regular Kohen. So why, according to the Ran, where this is couched in the language of a Kohen Gadol, why did Kadosh Baruch Hu put it in the language of Kohen Gadol, right? Why didn't he put it with the regular Kohen? How does the Ran is curious about this. How come we extend it? But we do extend it. So how would the Ran understand that? Okay. Then okay. So that's 6 questions already. Okay. This is where the meat of the sugya is. Okay. But here we have to go over a methodological point. Okay. It's all too often we're taught that when the Gemara asks Manahe Milei, right? That's what this stands for, Manahe Milei, which means where do we get this from, right? So it's usually the Mishnah quotes halacha, and then the Gemara will start off Manahe Milei, where do we get it from? And then what the Gemara is going to go ahead and do 9 times out of 10 is quote a pasuk, right? So okay, so now how does everybody say? Oh, okay. So the Gemara didn't believe it, right? The Gemara doubted the Mishnah's veracity. It didn't really believe that the halacha was a true halacha. It says, how do you know? Where do you get this from? And then it quotes a pasuk, and now we have a proof. Okay, great. That's clearly, anybody who thinks about this for like 4 seconds realizes that that's not what's happening here, right? The Gemara is not doubting the Mishnah about whether or not this is a real halacha, and didn't know about these psukim, and then goes ahead and says, "Oh no, you missed. I know you were Nasi. You really knew a lot of it. You missed these psukim. You didn't know, right? These guys did questioning Nasi, didn't know these psukim. So no, that's obviously not what's going on. So what my Rabbi Zucker taught me was that when you see these psukim, okay, when you see a pasuk, what a pasuk is doing is it's teaching you the nature of the halacha. In other words, the Mishnah brings a halacha. In this case, it's giving the Cohen first. And then the Gemara says, okay, what's the nature of this mitzvah? Menani mili, where do we see, well, what is this mitzvah here, right? So what pasuk best reflects the nature of the mitzvah? And here we have a 4-way machlokes. It's fascinating if you think about it, right? Because if you subscribe to the first way of learning menani mili, that it's really asking what's the proof. So anyway, you have 4 ways of understanding the proof of the halacha. They don't know, right? So how does that make any sense? That really doesn't make any sense. But if you understand our way of looking at Menane Milei, of where do we get this from? What's the nature of it, right? How do we understand what this halacha is all about? So we have 4 different understandings of this mitzvah. That's pretty amazing, right? 4 different ways of understanding the mitzvah. So if I would ask you right at the beginning, we said I don't really understand what the honoring a Cohen is all about. Right. So if I would have said there's going to be 4 ways of understanding it, that seems far-fetched. I don't get 4 different understandings of this mitzvah, but really we do. We're going to see 4 different ways. Okay. So that's why this is so important. So whenever you're learning Gemara and you see this this type of a formulation where you have Menane Milei and then 4 different opinions or 3 different opinions, 2 different opinions, or even just 1 opinion, understand that what the pasuk is doing is not bringing a proof. What the pasuk is doing is teaching you the nature of the mitzvah. So this is really, all our other things are good setup questions, right? But in order to understand what how the Gemara is really understanding this halacha, this is right, or this mitzvah, I should say, this is where it's going to be. So let's look at the 4 different halachas. So you should know that for me, I don't know if this helps you. I'm more. I've learned as time goes on that I'm more of a visual learner. When there's more than a couple of variables at one time, it always helps me to be able to see them. So what I do with the Gemara like this, I don't know if it helps anybody else, but I just simply chart it out, right? I take Rav Masna, and then I take Rav Yitzchak Nafla, then I take Rav Ashi, and then I take Rav Chia Bar Abba, and I put it in a chart. And then what I do is I put their names, and then I put their opinions, and then I leave something at the other end for the svara, right? And then eventually I'll see what a possible svara could be, and then put it in. That's just how I learn. But if you're a visual thinker, it's a much more, or for me at least, it works out. That's much more organized. So let's see what it says. Amar Masna, Damar Krav Yichtav Moshe Esat Torah Hazos V'Nei Cohanim B'nei Levi. So at the end of the Torah, right? So Moshe Rabbeinu gives the Torah out to the Cohanim and says the Cohanim, the son of Levium. And the Gemara asked, do we not know that they were the sons of that the Cohanim come from the tribe of Levi? Why does it have to say that? Cohen Barishal had a Levi, so it's to teach you that Cohen comes first and then a Levi. Okay, Rabbi Yitzchak Kamacham and Nakshu Cohen B'nei Levi. Same question, same type of thing. Cohen Barishal had a Levi, so we get it from a different pasuk with Nikshu Kohanim that the Cohanim came up. Rav Ashi says, right? It says B'nei Amram. Aaron or Moshe Avivta Aaron Gisho Kodesh Kodashim. So it says that Aaron was Kodesh of way for Moshe Rabbeinu. As Moshe Rabbeinu was at a certain level, and Aaron was Mekadesh past Moshe Rabbeinu, which shows that he's past. And Rechia Barabba says Kidashto L'chol Darash Kedusha. It says that we have to be Mekadeshim. Okay, and that is Rechia Barabba. So those are our four opinions, and that's where we're going to have to understand what this is all about. Okay, we're going to have to peek into the Rosh on this issue, but this is really going to be, these next two things are really our issues for next time, right? The Rosh says that if on Monday he separates, this is based on a Gemara, that if you have to separate between Monday and Thursday. Why? Monday, Thursday, and Shabbos, excuse me. Because on Monday and Thursday, no one really cares who gets the first aliyah. Everyone's in a rush, they want to get to Shalom, so we only have 3 aliyahs, right? But when it comes to Shabbos, so Shabbos is very important in Shul, and Yom Tov even more so. So everybody wants the first aliyah, right? So the Rosh maintain that if it's on a Monday or Thursday, the Cohen wants to give his aliyah to someone greater than him, he can. That's our halacha of the Cohen giving up on his kavod, right? We're peeking into this, but I don't want to have the issue of who goes first, a talmid chacham or a Cohen. And then the Rav Amram Gaon, right, disagrees and says the Cohen always comes first no matter what. Okay, and Rav Nטרונאי says that even in haaretz, even an ignorant Cohen goes before a talmid chacham, right? So we're talking about like a true like ignoramus. He would get the aliyah first. So our question is, what's the debate between the Rosh and Rav Amram Gaon about whether a Cohen can give away his aliyah? Why would we say he can give it away, or why would we say he can't give it away? And what does Rav Nטרונאי add when he says even in haaretz, even in the Geremus, he can get the aliyah first? Okay. The next part of this Beis Yosef, right? So he quotes Rashi that says he can give it up at a meal, his kavod, but not at Kriyas Torah. Okay, so we have to understand what's the difference when it comes to this mitzvah between Kriyas Torah and at a meal. And then you have the Maria Buhav here, who says that so you could hold that, and this is a fascinating halacha, like a position to take, that he can give it to a talmid chacham, but only if the talmid chacham is like well known everywhere. This has got to be like a talmid chacham of Forsom, like everybody knows about this guy. His stuff, his books go everywhere. It's like Rabbi Sachs, that's all, right? Everybody knows about Rabbi Sachs, right? Okay, great. But if like you bring in like the Rebbe from the local yeshiva, which everybody in the local town knows about him, right? But if you would bring him out to Texas and say, "Whoa, look who's here in Shul," everybody would be like, "Who's that? I don't know who that is." Right? I've never heard of him. Okay, I mean, I'm sure he's a big talmid chacham, but we've never heard of him. So that the Cohen couldn't give it up. So Ma'ari Abuav says he can only give up his aliyah or anything of his kedusha if it's somebody that everybody knows. But if it's not somebody that everybody knows, then no. Okay, so we want to understand what the difference is between those two types of people. Okay, and then then we saw that this is the Beis Yosef says that a Cohen can't be mochel on his kavod on Shabbos and Yom Tov, but during the week. Okay, so we want to understand how could he be mochel at all if the whole idea here is shalom bayis. Okay, right? Is darkei shalom. Okay, so those are our questions. Okay, so we've got 8, 9, 12 questions here that we have to answer. Okay, so the first question is, right, what's our svara here? Okay, what, right? And our svara here, when we develop a svara here, so here's the interesting thing. Our svara has to be expansive enough that it can hold 4 different opinions, right? You don't want to come up with 4 different svaras for the 4 different opinions that we have in our Gemara. Okay, does everybody understand what I'm saying methodologically, right? It's much better to come up with 1 svara, and then the 4 are arguing within that 1 svara. Okay, that's the idea, as opposed to coming up with 4 different svaras, right, as to the mitzvah itself. Okay, good? Okay.
Methodologically, is it correct for me to say that if I svara-wise think that a Cohen should get kavod, and why do I need these 4 psukim if the Gemara is coming along and giving me 4 different views, each one with a pasuk, then it doesn't make sense for me to come along with a svara why a Cohen should get more kavod. It has to come from a pasuk.
I understand. I'm coming.
We have the Gemara gives us 4 different reasons from psukim as a source for giving a Cohen kavod.
But not reasons exactly, but like 4
a source in why a Cohen gets kavod.
More along the lines of what the kavod is, what the nature of the kavod is, not why he's getting it, but what is this kavod?
How do I know a Cohen gets kavod? Not from these psukim?
The Gemara, the Mishnah says that a Cohen gets kavod. So now the question
is, the source of the Mishnah, Menahani Mili.
That's what it's asking. So that's what I'm saying. Menahani Mili is not asking what the source of the Mishnah is. Menahani Mili is asking what's the nature of this halacha.
Don't we go one step before that and say, why do we have to give kavod to a Cohen?
When you say what, philosophically?
No. What's the source of giving kavod to a Cohen? Why do I have to do it?
No, so we're not interested in what the source is. We know it exists. Now the question is,
from where?
No, but hold on. So
wasn't that the first page of sources?
No, your question is logical, but it's not something that, oddly enough, that the Gemara is concerned about. When we understand the nature of the halacha, then we'll know the source, because the source stems from the nature of it, as opposed to what we might think, which is first let's find the source, and then the source will tell us the nature. It's the opposite. It's interesting. It's like counterintuitive, but it's true. It's first we find what the nature of it is, and the nature will be borne out by the psukim. That's where we're gonna see that becomes the source. It's counterintuitive, 100%, because there's no pasuk that says "Thou shalt honor the Cohen," right? So for sure, so the closest that we get to is v'kidashto, that you should sanctify him. That's the
three lashonos of kavod and lahavdil and lahakdish.
Not only lahakdish. Only lahakdish is in the Torah. Lahavdil is there, but it's not as a mitzvah. It just says that you should be mavdil them. But what does that mean? What does it mean that you should be mavdil them? That's the question. I don't know. So now Mahani Mili. That's the whole point. Okay. So here's what I want to say. What's different between parents and a Rebbe and a Cohen? These are chacham and a Cohen. Those are the sources of the people that we know that we give kavod to. Is that the parents? We understand it's borne out by the relationship between those that have to honor and those receiving the honor. The talmid chacham, it's because of who the talmid chacham has made himself to be. Right, so since he's made himself as a representative of the Torah or whatnot, so then we have to give him honor, right? But the Cohen is different. The Cohen is unique, right? Not the actual Cohen is a unique individual, right? That's what the Torah is telling us. The Torah is telling us the Cohen is unique, okay? And we have a mitzvah of reflecting that uniqueness. How do we reflect that uniqueness? How do we show that the Cohen is unique, is different, right? We show that the Cohen is unique by giving him honor. Okay, so that's the svara. As far as the mitzvah of honoring the Cohen is reflecting the Cohen's uniqueness. Okay, that's
But
what
what's
we're.
the uniqueness of the Cohen?
What?
What's the uniqueness of the Cohen?
So from the Ramban, I would say that it's the fact that he's set aside to give the korbanos, right? That's what I would say. But let's look at what it says. And we're going to go a little. Your answer, I think, is going to be one of the debates that we have in this Gemara. Okay, I think that's what we're gonna see. Okay, but we do know that the Cohen is unique. That's for sure, right? There are halachos that deal with only the Cohen, and those halachos don't depend on who a Cohen can marry and who he can't marry, right? So there are unique halachos to the Cohen that are separate from how we treat the Cohen. So we know that the Cohen is unique. Okay. Now, so if you look at source 17, I think this is going to help us with the Rav Masna. This was Rav Masna's source. It says, "V'yichtav Moshe es Torah azos v'yitna al Cohanim b'nei Levi." Right? Moshe writes the Torah and he gives it to the Cohanim who are Leviim. The Keser Yonatan, which is one of our early translations of the Torah, right? We're talking about right. So it says Yonatan ben Uziel says, "V'yichtav Moshe es Torah azos u'masra la-Cohanim." Okay, he's moser to the Cohanim. Right? Why? Because as the Ibn Ezra says, you know, Cohen and Bnei Levi, why did they get their own Torah? Shehem Mori HaTorah, because they are the teachers of the Torah, right? So Ezra here, right? I think what Rav Masna is saying. This is our first source here. Rav Masna is saying is what's the uniqueness of the Cohen? The uniqueness of the Cohen is set aside to be the teachers of the Torah. Right? They're the Morei HaTorah. That's what a Cohen is, right? For a lot of people think that a Cohen spends his entire life in the Beis HaMikdash. It's not true. Cohen only spends at most 2 weeks in the Beis HaMikdash. At most. Maybe add the Chagim in also, right? If he gets a turn during the Chagim. But that's at most. So what does a Cohen do the rest of the year? Right? Because there's 24 families, they go on a rotation. So what is the Cohen doing the rest of the year? So the rest of the year, the Cohanim are the teachers, right? They teach Torah to the kids, to everybody else. Right? Ezra, are you raising your hand?
So then what? Yeah, what's the difference between the Cohanim and the talmid chachamim here?
So I don't think talmid chachamim are being honored because they're the Morei Torah. A talmid chacham could be a Morei Torah, right? But that's not what a talmid chacham is, right? He doesn't. Yes, he does have a chiyuv of teaching, but he's not set aside as a teacher, right? A Cohen from the time he's born. Right? When a non-Cohen is born, parents say he's going to be a banker, he's going to be a teacher, he's going to be a mathematician, he can be whatever he's going to be, right? But a Cohen, when the Cohen's born, right, mom and dad look at each other and be like, look at our new teacher, right? He's going to, right? So this is this kid's going to be a teacher one day. That's what he is. That's his uniqueness, that he's set aside to be a teacher. It's a fascinating thing. I've always wondered about it because let's say he stinks at it, right? Like, let's say, I know a non-Cohen can become a teacher. That's what they want to do. They can become a teacher. But what happens if you're a Cohen? It's just a horrible teacher. We all have horrible teachers, right? So chances are, right, if you force people to become teachers, they're not going to be great teachers. I don't know. Maybe they go to school to become good teachers, and you just hope, that they, or you give them the bad classes otherwise. I don't know. But in any case, that's the, right? That's the idea. Okay. So then you have Rav Yitzchak Nafcha. Okay. Rav Yitzchak Nafcha says as follows. He says, right? So he says that it's right. So what's the pasuk here? Right? So they're the ones, right? It says here is that they're chosen by Hashem, right? So here we have they're chosen by Hashem to serve Hashem and to give brachos to everybody, right? They do the brachos Cohanim every morning, right? At least here, and then right they decide halacha, right? So the uniqueness, according to Rav Yitzchak here, is that they are the ones that are chosen by Hashem for these special things, for these special responsibilities, right? So it's not the fact of what the responsibilities are, but rather that they are the ones, they're the chosen ones by Hashem. They're the chosen people of the chosen people, right? And that's their uniqueness. So we have to reflect that uniqueness about them. Okay, then you have Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi says, right? So he says this possibly Amram Moshe v'yivdal Aaron l'hagdisho kodesh kodashim. Okay, so here he says that they have a certain chalos. A chalos is a status, right? This is status is hard for the Western mind to understand because we like to believe in egalitarianism and equality among everybody, right? So everybody's the same. It's not true, at least not in the Torah, right? That so the Cohanim have a certain status. What's their status? right? Like Bisho Kodesh Kadashim. They are the sacred, the most sacred of the sacred. Okay, so they are unique in the fact that they are set aside to be the Kadosh people. Okay, that's what they are. That's what they're all about. Okay, and that's Rav Ashi. And then you have Rav Chia Bar Abba had said B'Kidashto, right? That we make them, and that I think that comes back to here, right? That this Ramban that we had talked about, that B'Kidashto means that they are right. That the whole davar shu kedusha, every single thing that has something of kedusha to it, they are set aside, right? We have to sanctify them to give them first. Why? And I think that's because they are the ones that give, right? And this is what the Ramban is teaching, because they're the ones that give the korban. Okay, that I think is what the idea is here. Okay, so I think with this machlokes, right, with these four-way machlokes, now we can understand some of the answers. Okay, so why is it so important that we give the Cohanim the first of everything, and they give them this color, even if they don't want to be honored, right? So right, because it's not about them, right? Where the kavod isn't about them, it's our chiyuv to reflect their status, right? We don't really care about the Cohen. That's what the Rambam is teaching us. That's why he's bringing it up first and foremost, because he's saying that honoring the Cohanim have nothing to do with the Cohen. It doesn't matter what he does for you. It has nothing to do with that. It's the fact that the Cohen has this uniqueness, and you have an obligation to reflect that uniqueness. That's the idea. Okay. Then we said we talked about the different languages in the Rambam, right? So I think that what this is saying is that there's three different characterizations of the way that we reflect the Cohen's special status. Okay, so Lahavdil is to show that they're unique by separating them, right? We separate them by showing the Cohanim are different than Leviim and Yisraelim. Okay, so that's the language of Lahavdil. The language of Mechabed is that we show they're different, right? We show they're unique by honoring them. And then Mekadesh is we do so by sanctifying them. And that's what the Rambam is saying, is that there's different characterizations for how we can reflect their uniqueness. So he uses different languages to show, because in different times, in different places, different ones will be more appropriate to the halacha than the other ones. Okay. How's giving them priority now, right? This is our right. This is our question, right? How is it that by giving them priority that we're showing they're unique? In other words, if this whole thing is about honoring, right? So then honor them the same way we honor parents and we honor rebbeim. But since it's not about that, that's not the nature of it at all, right? What's the nature? We're trying to show uniqueness. So then there literally has to be a unique way of reflecting that uniqueness. It has to be different. It cannot be the same way that we show it to a talmid chacham and to parents. It must be completely different. It has to be a different way altogether. Okay, and that's why this whole idea of giving the Cohen like kavod, the whole way we do so is different than the way that we do so for the other categories, because the other categories we're honoring them for whatever reason they have to be honored. But the Cohen, the honor is to reflect their uniqueness, and we do so both by action and by what we're doing. Okay.
These three lashonos that the Rambam says of kibud and kedusha and lahavdil are based in these psukim?
No, only I think lahavdil and kadosh was. Kavod was never in a pasuk.
And if somebody wants to come along with an additional one, if I want to say that you have to have yira for a Cohen.
No, so now you're making that up. That's yira is a whole separate thing. Why would you have to have yira?
So where does kavod come from? I can give as far why I can give yira. He represents Hashem.
No, it's not why I give. It's not why I give yira. It's the question is, here's what we do. We get right, and now the Rambam is saying these things that we're doing, we're going to call kavod. These things seem like kavod. It's not that it's not the Rambam's not making up the idea that you have to give kavod. The Rambam is saying opening up liftach rishon chol davar shel kedusha. What is that? Right. So the Rambam is saying, right. So the Rambam is saying that's a form of kavod. We were confused by that because we said, why would you, if you're going to show him kavod, then you don't give him first of anything. Right. So what are we saying instead? We're saying that no, we're not. It's not about giving kavod, right? That's not what it's about. It's about showing they're unique. right? So the Rambam says, showing them unique, you can call giving kavod. But it's not that kavod comes first and then we do these things, right? The Rambam is characterizing what kavod is.
A Cohen that has a set place at the table, I can sit there. It's not like a parent's place.
There's no yira. That would not be kavod or anything. Yeah. Okay. So what was the debate about between the Rosh and Amram Gaon and whether a Cohen could give his spot away? Okay. So the question becomes, it delves into how much of the mitzvah of the Kiddush, though, is in the Cohen's control, right? The Rosh understands that the mitzvah is for people reflecting the Cohen's uniqueness. And Rav Amram Gaon maintains that it's about a Cohen being made unique, right? So the question is, how much could he give up, right? So Rav Amram Gaon says he can't give up anything because it's not, there's very little in his control. It's all about showing the uniqueness. The Rosh holds that there is somewhat within our control the ability of whether or not we show him that kedusha. Okay, and that's why Rav Nטרונאי goes so far. He talks about the ignoramus, right? So he's saying that the Kiddush he's going to the extreme, right? He's saying that this is so much about reflecting the uniqueness of the Cohen that it doesn't make a difference if the Cohen's an haaretz, right? That doesn't matter at all, right? It makes no difference whatsoever that the Cohen's an haaretz, okay? Okay. Then then we have okay. Then the next question was about the Rambam, about whether he's blemished or not. Okay. So whether that was the Ramban had said that it comes from this Ramban right here in source 22. The Ramban had said that the kavod stems from the fact that he gives karbanos, right? He does the avoda, and the Rambam said that even if he's blemished, it doesn't make a difference, right? Because we're still going to give him kavod, but if it comes from karbanos and he's blemished, then he's not allowed to give a korban. So how does that work? So he says that even if he's the honor does come from him giving the korban, but even if he's personally disqualified from giving a korban, his status as a Cohen, as Zera Aaron, as part of the family of Aaron still exists. That doesn't matter. That's still true, right? So it doesn't make a difference if he personally can't give the korban, because it's not about the guy personally, but rather what's it about? It's about the fact that his status is that he stems from Zera Aaron, that he stems from the seed of Aaron, and that's why it doesn't make a difference if he himself is personally blemished. I don't think the Ramban and the Rambam are arguing at all. Okay, what about the chinuch? Right, we were troubled by this chinuch that he has to be mitzvah observant, right? So so how are we going to understand the chinuch when the chinuch says that the Cohen has to be Torah observant? If we say it doesn't make a difference what the Cohen is, it's not about this Cohen individually. It's about the whole tribe, literally, right? So the chinuch is saying that the person that is the Cohen has to reflect what the kahuna is all about, right? Since the Cohen is about uniqueness, this guy is showing that the uniqueness doesn't apply to him. He's simply saying, okay, it doesn't matter what the uniqueness is, right? The uniqueness doesn't matter. I'm giving it up. This doesn't matter to me at all, right? By not following the Torah, he's not reflecting kahuna at all. The whole idea of a Cohen is that he's a separate individual that serves God, that gives a bracha in God's name, right? That he teaches Torah. That's what a Cohen is. So when this guy stops observing mitzvos, so the chinuch is going to say he's no longer a Cohen. Right? Yes, he's technically a Cohen. If he does tshuva, he can step back into the kahuna, but he doesn't reflect the kahuna. So you're going to give this guy kavod. You're going to be mekadesh this guy. This guy's not mekadesh himself as a Cohen. So the chinuch says, yes, it's true. It's not about the individual, but the individual at least has to reflect the kahuna. It doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make any sense to sort of sanctify the Cohen and put him aside if the guy's not doing it himself. That's what he's going to say. Okay. Okay. Then we wanted to this idea of why the Ran is so convinced that the psukim are talking about a Cohen Gadol, and yet this halachos apply to the Cohen. So then, according to the Ran, why would halachos that apply to a Cohen be listed as things that are from the Cohen Gadol? In other words, why put it in that way? Because Baruch should have written the psukim differently. So how the Ran explains. So the Ran would say, no, of course it's based in the within the Kohen Gadol, because who better reflects the Kedushas HaKohen, right, the sanctity of the Kohen, than the Kohen Gadol himself, right? So the Psukim are going to talk about the example par excellence of what a Kohen is, right, by doing so with the Kedushas HaKohen. Okay. The last thing that we have to answer is this idea of Maria Abuhav's question about a well-known talmid chacham versus a regular talmid chacham, right? And what the idea is. So a talmid chacham, right, who's a well-known personality, so he's impossible to ignore. You can't if the Gadol Hador steps into the shul, you can't sit there and be like, oh, we're going to give the Cohen first because he's sitting there. It's like a bright light. There's a spotlight shining on him, right? So you've got to put him first, okay? So the Cohen is allowed to be mochel, but if it's just a talmid chacham, right, as great as he might be, but he's not well known, so the spotlight isn't there. It's not that big of a statement to pass him up and still remain honoring the Cohen. Again, we're going to have to see more about this in next week's Shiur B'li Neder, where we're going to look at the second part of this, which is the questions of Darchei Shalom, right? Of all the different things that come up where the chacham came along and said that the Cohen has to go first no matter what, right? Because otherwise we're going to have fights. And the second thing of, well, how do we balance a talmid chacham, the kavod due to a talmid chacham into a Cohen? So the thing to remember here for the next year, right? The svara to remember is the idea that what we're trying to reflect is the uniqueness of the Cohen, right? That's the idea behind this mitzvah. What we're doing is we're reflecting the uniqueness of the Cohen, and then we have different debates about how best to do that. Okay, that is the end of the Shiur.